Hi and welcome back to the Casual Watch Review channel. Well, today we have a watch that I've wanted to see in the metal since its launch. The soon to be very iconic C65 Worldtimer from Christopher Ward. I think it's fair to say Christopher Ward have had a standout year in 2020, and hopefully that's no reflection that the namesake of the brand left the business. Not only did we see the Worldtimer become popular, but they also released a new super compressor dive watch that I firmly believe was one of the most exciting dive watches to have been released this year. This was a subject we covered in length over on our Casual Watch Talk podcast when that watch was released. I have been obsessed with the new Christopher Ward super compressor watch. I think this is the most exciting dive watch that was released this last week, and I mean including the Rolexes. The brand has also had incredible success with their sapphire-dialed C60 dive watch among many of their other new releases. The watches they are producing lately are really separating themselves from the competition, and the new owners of Christopher Ward watches are happy to sing their praises based on the reviews that you can see on websites like Trustpilot. So does this watch really live up to the hype? Well, let's find out. The watch was lent into the channel directly by Christopher Ward, and I will be returning it after, as much as I would really love to hold on to it. Despite its almost dress watch appearance, this is firmly in the dive watch family. It boasts 150 meters water resistance and includes a screw-down crown. The watch sells for just under $1,300 and honestly, I think has an incredible quality versus price ratio. This is mainly due to how Christopher Ward's direct sales methodology works. They design, produce, and distribute the watches mostly with sellita movements, so they can carry that all-important Swiss-made text on the dial. Even though they have Swiss movements, the watch company is proudly based in the UK. Let's look at the measurements, then dive into the watch a little deeper. So we have a 41mm case, a thickness of 12.05mm, and a lug-to-lug of 47.1mm. The movement is a first for me. I've reviewed many watches with the sellita movement, but usually the 200 series. Here we have a GMT watch, the Swiss-made 300 series sellita movement, which is based on the ETA 2892. Now, if you're not familiar with sellita, they started out making movements based on ETA's out-of-patent automatic movements. They are now one of the leading movement makers and produce more movements annually than Rolex. In fact, during 2019, sellita produced and supplied 1 million mechanical movements. At the time, that was twice as many as ETA. Now, there were various factors at play, including a brush with the Swiss Competition Commission for ETA, but nevertheless an impressive number for sellita, who comparatively, compared to the others, is a newcomer to the industry. Here we have a 25 joule self-winding mechanical GMT movement with a 42-hour power reserve. In the date setting position, you can quickly set the date or the GMT hand, meaning you can independently adjust the 24-hour hand without stopping the watch. Very handy for traveling. You also have hacking and hand winding. The case is very well finished. It is, however, on the larger side, I would say. I think they could have gotten away with making it slightly smaller. It looks proportionally correct in pictures because of the 22mm lug width, I think. For a smaller wrist, the proportions may not work, honestly. It does look every bit its 41mm case size. I think this is probably why it's a good idea to have a generous return policy like they do. You can try the watch on with confidence and return it within 60 days. Here, you can see it on my 7.2-inch wrist, and it works perfectly for me, honestly. This is a brand new watch for return, so I've made sure not to adjust the bracelet for the next owner. The sides feature a very well executed and refined polishing and brushed areas. The lugs slope down, making the watch very comfortable to wear. That's enhanced by the DLC coated back case. The convex design sits nicely on the wrist. 10 out of 10 for comfort. I think the crown is the perfect size. A lot of vintage divers forget to proportion the crown correctly, not here. The metal bracelet fits the lugs perfectly, no gaps at all. The oyster style bracelet has solid links and feels very high quality. glossy and solid. The buckle is a triumph here. The machining, the action of the push release, and the diver's extension are honestly excellently well finished. This may be one of the best clasps I've seen on a sub $1,500 watch recently. This is enhanced by a quick release system on the bracelet where you can quickly swap the straps out. Let's take a closer look at the dial, the standout on this watch. With the bezel, this is what separates it from the rest of the retro diver Christopher Ward line, and honestly most of the GMT watches I think. It's both vintage looking and very contemporary. We actually technically have 3 time zones going on here. The main time zone of course is 1 here set to LA. Then you have the GMT hand pointing at the 24-hour track around the inner ring. The yellow and white denoting the day and night hours is a nice touch and adds a splash of colour to match the GMT hand. When you look at the watch, I think of it being a yellow and black watch. I think that's a testament to how well the yellow is applied. There is not fundamentally that much on the dial, but the contrast with the black and silver really brings it out, and it's not overdone at all. The yellow is a brave choice, as the expectation here would be that they used blue and red, but fortune favours the bold, and I think the yellow works really well. The third and final time zone is the omnidirectional bezel featuring 24 international cities. This bezel would however need to be continuously moved in order to lock in a third time zone, but it's a great reference if you need to work out the time between 2 different cities quickly. Here, assuming my GMT is set to London time, my central time as mentioned before is LA, we can rotate the bezel to London and see the time in Hong Kong very quickly. The action on the bezel is very smooth. That's surprising given the relative thinness of the bezel. There's clearly not a lot of room for an advanced mechanism in here, but it works really well. The only improvement I can see is the silver paint seems to be thinly applied, so it makes it look worn as you can see the black underneath. I'm not sure if this was intentional to give an aged look, but we don't see any other pre-aging on the watch like old radium style lume for example. I will say that if you're not familiar with world time bezels, they can sometimes be pretty controversial, surprisingly. And having the city names on there is the controversial part. For example, including cities that no longer exist or are named differently based on political or religious beliefs. But to be fair, I can't see any on the Christopher Ward that would cause offence to anyone. The central dial is matte black and allows the other items on the dial to really pop like those gorgeous applied indices. The deep black allows the GMT hand to be partially invisible when looking at the hands, and the day also appears as if it's magically part of the dial and not a separate wheel underneath. They've done a great job of it. The lume is there, applied to the indices and all hands including the GMT hand. The only point with the GMT hand is you can't easily see the second time zone in the dark like you can the main 3 time zones because the 24-hour track is not loomed. The hands are an absolute triumph here, some of my favourite I have seen on a watch. The minute hand goes all the way to the minute track and both hands are treated to a gorgeous bevel down the side that really catches the light. We have the now iconic Trident second hand that is a trademark of Christopher Ward. And while we're talking about that, I know having Christopher Ward's name printed in full on the dial really divides opinion, but I do have to say here that with all the other text information on the dial and bezel already, it really doesn't draw your eye as much as maybe some of the other models might do, and it would be a shame to pass on this watch that offers so much because of that factor. You can tell a great deal of design effort has gone into the dial because some of the very complex finishes on the hands and indices not only look effortlessly simple, but they look like they all belong together, like how the minute hand perfectly covers the indices when it hits that 5-minute interval. This is one watch I am very sad to send back. I think they've done a fantastic job of it. It was very kindly lent into the channel by Christopher Ward, so big thanks to Rosie at Christopher Ward for sending it in. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. I'm really interested. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on the Casual Watch Review channel. Thanks guys, bye.